Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today's episode is going to move everyone. Not only if you have an issue with addiction, it's going to move every single soul that this story touches. This is Randy Longshot Clark. Randy, how are you, sir?
Life is good, like I always say.
Life is good. I want to open up with a little bit of monologue. This was a write-in story to Truth Talks, and I will tell you this, Randy. One of the things that's really interesting about doing 26 years of interviews, it really takes something pretty special to move me the way that your story moved me. I love the twang in your voice. I love the conviction that you have. I love the passion and emotion that you bring to the story. I believe this is one of the stories that is going to not only touch someone that needs to hear this story, but it's also going to touch those people around people that suffer with addiction. So I want to open it up by first of all asking, how in the world does someone get the name Longshot?
Well, the criteria to be called a long shot is you need to be a long shot. Okay. And what that means is I suffered from addiction for 17 years. And at the end, 3.5 years ago, I wanted to die. So let me back up and just say, when I talk, I want you to listen to what you relate to. Don't look for the differences. Whenever we compare with each other, we either feel above or below. Some people have trauma that fuels their addiction. Some people have mental illness fuels their addiction. It doesn't matter what fueled, what started, or whatever. What I want you to listen to, if you're suffering out there, is where it ended up and the emotions I had behind years of addiction. Okay. And what it did to me spiritually, what it did to me emotionally, what it did to me relationally. Okay. Obviously financial as well, but that's the financial bottom was the easiest one. It's everything else which knocked me down. Okay. So I came from a good family and I have no good excuse to be an addict, be an alcoholic. My dad was a Marine. One of the things though is in the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about we were powerless over our addiction or alcohol or drug, whatever you belong to, that our lives had become unmanageable. A lot of people think about that unmanageability as my 5 DUIs, the divorces, the money that was spent, the line. Yes, it is the unmanageability, but the real unmanageability is that even as a kid, I always felt different, right? I was an outgoing kid, but there was something inside that I just didn't quite fit in. I was super shy when it comes to girls and areas, and I was always unsure. I remember asking my dad about 7 or 8 years old, "Hey, Dad, I don't know how to write a check." He was writing a check in the grocery store, and he's like, "Well, you'll learn that, son." And what I'm prefacing here is the unmanageability started at an early age of that. I just felt that there was something missing, right? The difference is I didn't use drugs or alcohol at 8 years old to medicate that unmanageability. As I got older and the unmanageability of my life got greater, I found drugs and alcohol to start to close up that hole because it was the solution to my anxiety. It was a solution to my any sort of trauma or guilt for not showing up as a father. It was a solution. So I go through the Marine Corps, served in light combat, Desert Storm Somalia as a crew chief, excelled in the Marine Corps. Honor graduate out of Marine Corps boot camp. I was #1 out of my school. Got the Commanding General's Award in Army. Prior to the Marine Corps, I could go into the National Guard because I could join at 17. I got the Commanding General's Award on that. So my life was built on achievement, right? When I got something, I felt good about myself, right? And there's a guy by the name of Simon Sinek and also Tony Robbins that, they talk about that there's two parts in life. There is the achievement, which is the excitement, right? I got to do this, I achieved this, I got a certificate. But what we really want is fulfillment. And I'm going to talk about the journey from going from meeting achievement to fulfillment, right? So here I am, Marine Corps, get out, and the drinking was there, But I was able to drink at nighttime and be able to get up in the morning for work. No real consequences until I came 27 years old. And at 27 years old, I picked up my first drug. I also got my first DUI, and that's where it really started. See, I had a 6-figure job before I was 30 years old, working in a $10 billion company, and on the outside, I had arrived. Right? I mean, there was a number of things in my life where people said you can't do this, and I showed them when I was in the Marine Corps. I was an ordnanceman, and which is weapon systems, and I went to a helicopter squadron where they said you can't be a crew chief unless you're a mechanic or hydraulics. I learned the helicopter over 6 months. I became a crew chief. I went into the electronics industry, and they said you can't be outside sales unless you have a college degree. You really need an engineering degree. I had neither. Somebody gave me a shot. My point to all that is that it was false pride. It was a false sense of security that I was the maker of my own, like my life, meaning like everything out there defined me in here. I needed approval. I needed to be number one in sales. I needed that girl to talk to me. I needed all those things to make me feel okay. And on the days when I didn't feel okay, that's the days where I would pick up a drink. The problem is, according to the place that I go to get sober, is I have an allergy, and that allergy manifests itself with more times than not, I drink more than I want to. And when after I picked up a drug, which really brought me to my knees, is when I really started to have major consequences. Okay. So I ended up losing that 6-figure job. And then I ended up losing another 6-figure job. And then I ended up losing another 6-figure job. And so I'm going to recap 17 years of addiction. So over the 17 years, I sold anything I had value. I gave away. I pushed away family, friends. I didn't show up for my daughter for 17 years. I didn't even see her for 17 years. I was in the midst of the grips of the fight of my life. That was unwinnable to me. I never pictured myself at a point in my life where I would ever be without hope. And I got to tell you, when you lose it, it's hard to get back. So 17 years of addiction, I was unemployable, job after job. I lived with a girl for a couple of years and another girl with a couple of years, and these poor things, I mean, they tried everything in their power to get me sober. And here's the problem with addiction. And if you're out there and you're a mother, you're a father, or you're a wife, and you've got somebody who's struggling with addiction, and you just feel like if I could only do more for them, they would get sober. I'm telling you, if love was enough to get somebody sober, I would have been sober a long time ago. If the courts, if losing a job, getting a job, having a baby, if all of that was all we needed to get sober was a consequence or an achievement, we would all be sober. We would have no need. But I'm going to tell you, and I'll talk about it through the end, it's the work. It's the work. It's the spiritual growth. It's the internal leveling of the pride, an absolute gift of desperation, the willingness to go beyond any length to be able to put in remission a disease that tells you you don't have one, and a disease that's trying to kill you, but it'll settle if you're miserable. So 17 years, September 4, 2017, I had been bouncing around from halfway house to halfway house with the sober living for 6 years. And I'm sitting there. It's a Friday. I got my military check, and I'm supposed to pay rent. It's like the first, and I got to pay rent. And I spent it, and like I had done many times over. And I was sitting in this room that I was renting, urinating in a Tide bottle because I was petrified to walk out of the room because the owner of this house lived in the other room, and I hadn't paid rent, and I knew I didn't have it. And I'm telling you, Like, you can put me in a helicopter in Somalia, and I don't have fear like that. I mean, what scares me in life is to be hungry, homeless, or lonely, you know? And I text her and I was like, hey, I really messed up. She says, I know you have a problem. I'm going to give you a couple days to make some arrangements. And I said a little prayer and I was like, God, if you're not going to kill me, can you heal me? I said, can you please open the right door for me? And I made 5 phone calls. I called a couple people in treatment. They're like, hey, man, we don't have a scholarship for you because I had no insurance. And, prior to that, I had been to multiple homeless shelters. I mean, I had pushed everybody away to the point to where there was just nothing more they can do for me. Like, they had to love me from a distance. There's a phrase that says that you gotta detach with love, because their enabling was killing me. And I called my dad one more time. I said, hey, Dad, I'm going to be thrown out. And he just, my mom and dad love me. And they have done everything they can. And I could hear my dad's voice shaking inside. And he's like, son, I just got to let go and let God. Thank God he read an Al-Anon book, And he saw the truth that there was nothing they were going to do that was going to get me sober, And I had called, my 5th call was to a guy by the name of Joe Bear at a sober living that I had been 9 years earlier. And he knew I was in, out of the program, 30 days, 60 days, 9 days, 30, And he called me back and he said, Randy, I hear something in your voice. And I said, Joe, I got no car, no money, no job. I've got nothing. And he says, you're right where you are and should be to really have an opportunity to get sober this time. Hang on to that feeling. So I walked into sober living with a scholarship for the first couple of weeks because I had no money. And my twin brother, who, God love him, both of my brothers, they tried. He gave me $40 and he had given me, believe me, thousands, there's like hundreds and hundreds before that. In fact, at about 3 years of sobriety, he said, you know how much money you saved me? I said, well, I'll take a rebate, So he gave me $40 and I bought ramen and I bought ravioli, and that was going to be my food. And he said, don't call me unless you just want to talk. So I walked in that house, and from there, I just launched on a vigorous course of action. I got a sponsor the next day. I knew what I wanted to believe, or, that in the program of 12 steps, you can believe in a higher power. And I wanted to believe in my God, Christian. And he said, the next impactful thing that just changed my life, he said, Randy, you need a radical departure from your old life. That means everything you do, how you talk, how you respond to life instead of reacting to life, who you hang out with, what you put in your mind, what you put in your body, all of that has to change one thing at a time. And I can remember the next night I went to a recovery meeting, and I'm broken inside, man. I just I got no shot. I got no evidence from my history that I'm going to be able to do this. No evidence. Hence the long shot. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and I see this girl get up there. She's got 5 years of sobriety, and she's got this glow about her. And she starts to share about her story, and she's from an affluent family, and something happened, and she had an accident. She picked up Oxycontin, and then she couldn't afford it. because her mom and dad were watching the money, and she went and she started dating a dealer, and the dealer got busted. And she said when she was dating the dealer, these girls would come up and they want to trick and sell their body and stuff for drugs. And she's like, I'll never do that. And the dealer got busted, and she said start selling her body. And then there was this group of girls at this real nasty house, and she's like, well, I'll never end up there. And at the end, she ended up there on a dirty mattress, urinating and defecating in a bucket. And then she talks about her story of redemption through the work of recovery, how her life started to transform, and she was able to forgive herself. She had this glow about her. And at that point, some of the fuel for my addiction was I didn't show up as a father. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of things you can suck at in life. Being a father shouldn't be one of them. You know, I couldn't even take care of myself though. And I thought for a minute, I was like, man, if she can feel that way about herself, she must have had all kinds of guilt and shame about what she had done to her body and what she had done to herself and what she'd done to her reputation. And for the first time, I got my first taste of hope. And I found hope through her story. And that's the program of recovery is we find hope in other people's stories. Because if you've gone as far down as I have, you know there's no way possible that you can do this on your own. So 2 weeks into sober living, I'm laying there and I get my first lesson on gratitude. Joe Bear walks in at 6:30 and I've been up since 6:30 in the morning. I went and worked day labor for $63, right? Six-figure employee working for $63. I got to tell you, it's humbling, but it's necessary. For you parents out there, for you people out there, you got people early and young in recovery. I'm telling you, the more that they're able to work and grow and build their own life, the better off they're going to be able to handle life when it starts throwing curveballs. There is power in the struggle. It builds character. It builds perseverance. It builds self-esteem. When we come in this room, it's like, okay, guys, I need my car. I need my phone. I need all this stuff, right? I'm telling you, I built an entire life. I've got a house on the water, man-made lake, a wife today, 3 beautiful stepdaughters that they're my daughters. You know, they're my they're my daughters. And all of that was built from a bag of clothes, $40, no driver's license, no car, and nobody in my corner except a couple people, my family loving me from a distance. So there's power in the struggle. So I'm laying there in bed. It's like 10 o'clock at night. Joe Bear walks in and says, hey, Randy, he says, can you walk the dogs? I said, Joe, I'm tired. I said, do I have to? He says, you don't have to, Randy. He says, you get to. He says, I can take you out on the Dixie Highway where, you know, it's where the drugs and all the trouble's at. He says, there's somebody out there that would kill for this dog walking problem right now because it means they're safe. It means they're loved. It means they're protected. And I got up and I said, man, you're right. And I'm going to tell you, that lesson has carried me through the last 3.5 years, walking around in gratitude. And one of the things I'm going to talk about here in a little bit is emotional sobriety. And I used that lesson as I started to date my wife, 2 years ago. And she doesn't like to cook. I love to cook. She does so many other amazing things though. And so I'm cooking for like the girls and them. And I had a long drive back and forth to their house and they're like, Randy, you don't have to cook, And I said, I don't have to, I get to. And it's funny because I have these little phrases that changed my life and I start to say them and now they start to repeat them and they say them joking. Like, we know, Randy, it's a get you, And but in a cool way. It's kind of like something transformed my life, and I get to pass that down. And I got to be honest with you, I never thought I'd be in a position to be able to pass something down to a kid, because I didn't have anything that anybody wanted. I'll fast forward a couple months, and my sponsor and this deacon that I was working with from Calvary Chapel, once, we're meeting once a week and talking daily. And one of them asked me, "Hey, Randy, what's your definition of an abundant life?" And this is the deacon. I said, "That's easy, man." I said, I want a woman to love me for my potential, not for me, for my potential. And I said, I want a car because I haven't had one in 8 years. And I want a job that I don't hate, because through 17 years of addiction, the jobs start to pick you. It's one of those things where I was very good at what I did. I could sell, right? And I didn't sell because I was cheesy or lying. I could sell because I wanted to solve things for people, right? And so I just needed a job that didn't look too far into my resume, So that means they picked the job. I didn't get to pick the job. So sometimes I went with more credible companies. And my sponsor says, "Hey, Randy, what do you want out of sobriety?" And I said the same thing. I said, "It's easy. I want a woman that loves me for my potential, and a car and a job." And both of them said the same exact thing. If that's all you want, you're going to miss out on the best parts of recovery. They said, "But this is your journey, man." 8 months of sobriety. I'm sitting in my apartment I'm on the lease. For the first time in 17 years, my ID matches my address. And for a lot of people, that may not seem like a big deal, but it is, and I'm sitting there, and it hit me. I had just been accepted to work at Calvary Chapel in children's ministry, and Hector, a Marine, and been there 20 years, and he knew my story. Like, I had been serving at a satellite there for like 7 months, so they got to know me. But Hector didn't know me, and I told him my story, and he said, "Why do you want to work in children's ministry?" And I just said, I got like a hole. I didn't get to show up as a father. And my life has changed in the last 8 months. And I learned a few things that I think would really help these kids, because I was studying the good book and the big book at the same time, and learning what God can do through us to help other people. And that day I was sitting in my apartment. He said, he let me know. He says, "Hey, I'm going to give you a shot in children's ministry, because I think you're going to be good for them, but I think they're going to be good for you too. He said, I think you need a home, And I'm sitting on my couch, and I got that news, and I just was filled with joy. And then I got to thinking, I got a daughter who still doesn't talk to me, still haven't seen. I've got $100 in the bank. I've got a car with tape holding up the window, and I loved it. I've got food in the fridge. My life was abundant because people started to trust me. My twin brother, pull it together, Eddie. My twin brother had been inviting me over for dinner for the last 6 months, right? And I couldn't be in his home. And for the last 6 months, every Saturday, we're doing dinner. And I had always wanted somebody else's life. Denzel Washington, a lovely man, Matthew McConaughey, these guys are icons, and, they talk a lot about spiritual stuff, and I wanted to be them, right? But for the first time, I was in the presence of a life that was starting to mean something. And I didn't need their life. And I didn't need anybody's car, and I didn't need anybody's job. I didn't need anybody's stuff to be valuable. My barometer had changed. I realized that the most important things in my life, I couldn't lose in a fire. It was the trust. It was the joy that I was enough, that my word meant something, for the last 8 months, I had chased character, not currency, that people started to come to me and say, hey man, can you sponsor me? I see your life and how it's changed, and materially I had nothing. And at that point right there, just gratitude for food, water, shelter, it changes everything. I tell my daughters, the gratitude is an action word. And they're still trying to understand it, because they're like, what is leaving a dish in this? What does doing my dishes have to do with gratitude? And I'm like, I said, you guys don't understand that, like, there was a time when I didn't have any dishes to wash, and I didn't have any food to eat. And I never expect you to understand that level of brokenness. And I don't ever want you to understand brokenness. And jokingly and encouragingly, I talked to him about that through our actions is how we tell what God has done in our life, what God's doing through our life, through our actions. Sometimes we're the only Bible someone will ever read. You know, sometimes my life is the only big book somebody will ever read. And I have to carry myself. It's a privilege to call myself somebody in recovery. My wife said something very profound to me about being her husband. She waited 11 years, Christian woman, and she said, with great privilege comes great responsibility. And I realized what a privilege it was to be brought into a home with two teenage daughters and a 22-year-old from a man that couldn't be trusted, that nobody wanted. And it's not because anybody was bad people. They just couldn't do anything with me. To a place now where I'm a trusted husband. My wife and I serve in children's ministry together at our church. And our daughters slowly have built a bond of trust, and they know that I love them like I don't know the difference between them and a blood daughter, you know. And at times they come to me for counsel, you know, and I'll end with this and let you talk, for God's sakes. But like the oldest, you know, we're about 8 months dating her mom, and it's funny because like they know I'm an emotional guy, right? And she says, Randy, I'm going to ask you something, but don't cry, you know? And she says, hey, I got a speech to do, and somebody who's impacted me. And she said, I want to do it about your story about get to and have to. And I'm like, I'm welled up inside, not from pride, from gratitude that my life has been redeemed in such a way that somebody actually wants something. And it's not to elevate me, man. It's to elevate the men in my life that took time when I was the absolute long shot to ever recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. Absolute gratitude for a God who didn't stop pursuing me. So she did her speech. She texted me the next day and starts off with, don't cry, but I got the best grade in the class. And she obviously didn't get to see me, but I had tears rolling down my face. Not because I'm something special. Because I can't believe what an opportunity that I have today. One of the biggest lessons that I learned in recovery is that yes, we want a better life, right? But the real gift that I left out when I told you that the most important thing is I couldn't lose in a fire, the real gift is not my house on the water. My daughters and my wife, they are amazing. And I am truly blessed. And my family back in my life. And those are amazing. I call those, that's like the icing, right? But the gift is the ability to have a set of tools and a story to be able to impact others at their lowest point. My mantra is I'm going to love God, love others, and make a difference. And that's not a soundbite. I do very well in my job. I started out down here, and I'm a VP at the Source Treatment Center, and I'll talk about, I'll let you talk in a minute, and I'll talk about why this is a place I call my home. But it's having a life that you get to reach down in someone's soul. I don't get anybody sober, and I don't save lives. I got a guy who I helped 2 years ago. He wrote a review on Google. It says, Randy saved my life. I had a knife to my arm, and he talked me off the ledge, found me a treatment center. And when we became friends, he said that in a meeting one day. And I said, listen, man, I appreciate it. I don't save lives. I get a front row seat to the miracles that God is doing through us to you. I don't have the ability to save anybody's life. I do have a set of tools. I do have a new perspective on life that I can pass down, mentor, that can give you a shot at doing the work that will save your life. I'm gonna take a breath and let you talk.
Well, I appreciate that. You know what I always say is the best story ever told is the one that's uninterrupted. There was nothing that I could have interjected into there. It would have only taken away from your story. And you are exactly the epitome of what True Talks is about. Is we want to send out a message that, this world's just so messed up. It's messed up because, you know what, if we bring on somebody that's super attractive, a model, maybe a TV personality, you get 1 million views. Randy Longshot Clark, while you may not believe it's necessarily you saving a life, and I do believe it's God coming through you to help save that life, but we're saving lives, man. And producer Chad and I said, you know what? Yeah, we want to make money. We want to do what everybody else does with a business, but we want to feel good at the end of the day that we're doing the right thing. And what I love about your story, and the reason I said, we've got to run this story. Number one, you're humble. You're willing to literally go full open kimono. Here I am naked. This is my story. This is what it is. That's what True Talks is all about. The other thing is I believe this with 100% of my fiber, that sometimes with these addictions, there is only one power that can get you past it. I've seen it too many times where people try and talk somebody out of an addiction. You try and do something. It's a movement. And producer Chad and I talk about this all the time. We reflect back on stories, and our podcast was never faith-based. Our podcast was totally about bringing on incredible stories that change people's life through the story of someone else. But yet it's really quite interesting to me. A Chad Williams that we run, this is a Navy SEAL. This is the toughest of the toughest guys in the world. Goes to church with his parents, basically to appease them, and God punched him right in the face. And literally set him down, stopped him in his tracks, and changed his entire course of his life for the better. We see this all the time. I never leave it out of the story because it is the story. And I hear that through you. The other thing that you'll see sometimes is sometimes people get choked up. I get choked up a little bit myself. But sometimes people get choked up. But when you see a person get choked up like you do, those tears are real as it gets. As real as it can possibly get. And I think that is what really changes lives, when the people see the authenticity of what it is that you've went through, what you've been through, and just getting raw, as raw as you possibly can. Because I think a lot of people want to say, well, maybe his addiction wasn't bad as mine. Maybe he had more support than I do, right? It's that excuse. There's going to be something that doesn't allow you to get past that. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you being as raw as you are. I do want you to talk a little bit. There was one saying that you had, and again, with Truth Talks, we believe there's 8 seconds in every story that'll change a life. There was one statement that you made that really was profound to me, and it was that for the longest time, no one needed to hear anything from you. And I know that was emotional as hell when you finally got that respect back. And you talked about your family, you talked about their support and all of that. I guess the big thing that I want to hear a little bit more from you is, what about those people that just feel they're too far gone? Were you as low as it could get?
Listen, let me put it to you like this. You talk about the faith side of it in recovery, in the steps. The second step requires you to believe in a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity. And a lot of people, especially people that have trauma, they have trouble with that. They're like, where was that God when this happened? Where was that God when this happened? And there is no, and I'm not here to debate anybody's trauma. I'm not here to debate whether he is or he isn't. I know where he is for me. I would propose and suggest that you think like me for a moment, which is this. There was no human power that stopped my addiction. If you think somebody wants to be a deadbeat dad, be a horrible brother, be a horrible son, lose jobs, sleep on the street, be hungry, be homeless, be lonely, be a liar, be a cheat, be a thief, you think somebody wants to be that on purpose, and that would kill for someone to just snap their fingers or love me back to self? I was beyond human aid. And because I was beyond human aid, I needed a power greater than ourselves, myself. My power is God. The second step of recovery doesn't require you to identify it and name it. What it says is, if you've properly done a first step, which means you were beyond human aid because the courts, the wife, the daughter, none of that was enough, right? You're here, hopeless state of mind and body, right? I can't. And what people don't understand is, to be an addict or an alcoholic, maybe you still got your 6-figure job and you're sitting there and you're like, I got my stuff, Randy. My wife's pissed at me. She tells me I drank too much, but I got my stuff. The definition is what kept me out there for a long time. I thought it was the guy who lived under the bridge. I thought that was the definition. The definition, this is not a clinical definition. This is through recovery. We talk about 2 things. One, when I drink or use, do I drink or use more than I want to? Number 1, the answer was yes. And number 2, in lieu of consequences, can I stop entirely? See, recovery is 2 parts. There's the drink and the drug, which is not the problem. It's the solution to my problem. The steps that I went through didn't teach me how to stop drinking and drugging. It taught me how to live with Randy without the use of drugs and alcohol.
Let me ask you this question. Especially when you're talking to family members or people that you truly care about, and someone in the family is addicted to something. I assume you've heard this a billion times. What is obviously we've went through all the keys, went through everything. Is there anybody that can't get past it?
Is there anybody that can't recover?
Yeah.
Well, the easy answer to that is everybody has the opportunity to recover. Now, I'll put a caveat there. There are some people that suffer from mental illness, and until that is addressed, they will not recover. But there's nobody beyond help. Some people have trauma. One of the reasons why I think we specialize in trauma at the source is because we realize it's like 70% of the people in this world have some sort of trauma. I went through trauma therapy for a hang-up. I was stuck. There was a conversation that went through my head over and over that said, you're a deadbeat dad and you're never going to amount to nothing because you failed at being a father. And if you fail at being a father, you're going to fail at everything in your life. My relationship with my daughter hasn't changed, but the relationship that I have with myself about my daughter has changed. The negative emotion that I had, the tape, the stuckness that ran over and over, stopped. I found a new truth that the past happened, but it doesn't exist today. That there's no alternative world I get to step into and be a better father. There is nobody beyond help. But I will tell you, especially when picking treatment centers, I'm not here plug. I'm just saying that there's fuel for addiction, right? Trauma and mental health, if those are not addressed properly, their chances of sobriety are very difficult. Okay. The other part of that is if we could bottle desire and willingness at the door, whether it be a 12-step room, a sober house, if we could bottle desire and willingness, we would be millionaires. Gratitude and willingness are the two things that people lose first once they get some food in their belly and they get a couple nights sleep. Let me say this. I would always encourage the families to bring in a professional. They are not equipped to handle or do an intervention. I'm just telling you, like one of the things I do is interventions, and I want to let you talk, but I want to say this real quick. I was in the middle of an intervention. Sometimes it's called an event intervention, which is quick. You don't have time to do a process intervention where you get the family and you sit in a room and you've seen it on TV. You don't have time for that. There's a situation that has to be stopped, right? And the person is at a point of desperation, and so the mother just was one of the worst enablers I've ever seen in my entire life. And I said, and this is something through neuro linguistic programming and rapid resolution therapy, what I'm about to tell you is, and I said, I want you to repeat after me. And I said, I want my son to be sober. She says, I want my son to be sober. And I said, I would love for my son to have the life that he deserves. And she says, I would love for my son to have the life that he deserves. And then I said, but I don't need it to move on with my life. And she broke down. She couldn't say it. And I'm not saying as a parent or a husband or a wife that we want to move on, or that. I'm just telling you that it's like this. Here's what I told her. I said, he's drowning and you're drowning. And I'm the rescue swimmer. And he keeps swimming towards you. And you're going to take each other down. You need to get out of the water and let him swim to the rescue swimmer. And I'll take him to safety. And that's the thing is, the families, you got to get a professional involved. Call a treatment center. Call the source. Call somebody that has experience with this, because you're too entangled. It's too emotional for you. And that would be my best recommendation.
No, I believe that with 100% of my fiber. You know, when one of the things we talk about is what we call experiential knowledge too, and maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I believe if you have enough conversations, somebody's going to give you that one word, that 8 seconds, and it will change your life. I don't believe anybody is incapable of recovery. I just don't. I think that there's that magical conversation. And what's fun about it, and what I love about doing this show, and what I love about what I do is I love that when you hear that story, the underdog wins the game. And half the time, well, way more than half the time, probably 90% of the time, that 8 seconds comes from somebody you would never expect it. So, Randy, here at True Talks, we want to thank you so much for coming on our show, sharing your story. It's emotional for me because, especially when we get a write-in story, or we get a story as powerful as yours, I sit there and I think to myself, going back, and this is why I do what I do. This is why we love what we do here at True Talks. At one point, no one wanted to hear what you had to say. And today, we're here on our show putting your story out for everyone to hear. And I don't know what that means to you. I have an opinion that you may tell us, but I want to tell you, man, I connected with you soul to soul from the very first moment I heard the story. It's authentic. It's real. I believe it's impactful. I believe that your story is the same mission we use at True Talks to really make a difference in this world. And that's what we are trying to do here. We don't get fancy. We don't do a whole lot of things that a lot of other people do. It's about truly sharing heart-to-heart stories to make someone change. And I hope that any listener that hears your podcast and has a change writes to us so we can fulfill our mission to tell you just how important you are in this world. And obviously, we think the world of you. I want to give you the last segment here, though, to talk about Longshot Recovery, all the stuff that you do. You wrap this segment up, and I know you're shy and it's hard to get you to talk, but if you could just wrap this up at the end, that'd be perfect.
You know what I really want to go back to is where you said I wasn't good looking enough to get 1 million views.
Right. Well,
can we reflect on that for a minute?
I guess we can.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that right.
You did hear that right. I mean,
so now that I realize I'm not here for my looks, okay, so I have a higher calling, okay, I can accept that. So what I want to say is this: Simon Sinek, one of the guys that I listen to, he talks about a Navy SEAL story. He said, I asked the Navy SEAL one day, who's going to get through BUDS training? And he said, I can't tell you who's going to get through BUDS training, but I can tell you who's not, more times than not. He said, it's not going to be the college athlete that's never been tested. He said, it's not going to be the leader who always delegates. He said, many times it's going to be the smaller guy that he's tired, he's hungry, he's exhausted. And somewhere deep down inside, in the midst of that turmoil, he finds a way to help the guy next to him. And that guy who survives BUDS helps the guy next to him. And I've heard the Navy SEALs, they had like a little roundtable discussion, and they talk about what's one of the keys to getting through the toughest military training in the world. And it's selflessness. And that is what sobriety is all about. It's about when we realize that we're put on this earth to not be a taker, to serve. Andy Stanley talks about in a marriage, it should be a race to the back of the line to outserve each other. Now, my wife and I talk about that. We're like, don't keep score, trying to outserve each other. And that's life. And that's what recovery's taught me. So I'm going to end with this. My passion is not to be a VP of a treatment center. The VP of a treatment center, the source and the family place for pregnant, right? We do amazing work, love it. They let me live out my passion by helping others, whether you have insurance or not, okay? If you have any family, you need help, reach out to the source treatment center. Let me give you a phone number. 954-698-4358, Source Treatment Center, 954-698-4358. That is addiction help, insurance or not. We're here for you, okay? We're a team of long shots. Everybody gets a clean slate when they walk in the door. Now, my passion, where I get to give back to people that are in need, to families that want to know, how do you go from wanting to die to a life of no hope, no direction, to a life where I don't have enough time to go visit and see the people that want to hang out with me, that need my help. I don't have enough time. I literally have to just shut it off sometimes so I can spend time with my family. My life and my heart are full. And I talk about this through my Facebook page and my YouTube called Longshot Recovery. Because you don't have to, I mean, there's only going to be one long shot Randy, but you know that we're all long shots. Like in life, in recovery, 7% of the people really get long-term sobriety. So we're all long shots. And if you want to know how to chase character, not currency, if you want to know how to gain a set of tools that my mentors taught me, that my mentors continually teach me, you got to understand, I'm a liar, I'm a cheat, I'm a thief, I'm a deadbeat dad. It's in remission through his grace and through the work through recovery, and with men who have what I wanted spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. And you can find that on Longshot Recovery. Reach out to the source. We love you and God bless.
All right. Thank you so much. You're just such an inspiration to me. We encourage everybody that is watching us also to go back and look at some of our Truth Talks podcasts. We had Chad Williams, Navy SEAL, same thing. He talked about who was going to make it, who may not. And it was always the smaller guy that it was maybe even the most quiet, not the best in shape. And it was that perseverance that whatever it took. His line was, "I'll die before I quit." And that is each one of our podcasts that we do is based on that 8 seconds somewhere. It will change your life. And there is no doubt that your story is going to change some lives of people. And, we always encourage too, share our stories. Share the stories. If you know somebody who has an addiction problem, it's not just for people to keep to themselves. The whole reason we do this and what you do is to share that story. Become the most interesting person in the room. Anytime somebody has an addiction story, say, "Listen, I know this Randy Longshot. It's the most incredible story ever. I know Truth Talks," and they share all these stories of recovery and addiction and all these cool things. You have made us richer. You have made us more popular in the world. You have made us humble. You have given a story that is not easy probably to tell. You've shared your emotion, you've shared your heart, you've shared everything that a human being does. And I love the fact that you're not scared to share God. I love the fact that you're willing to put everything on the line to help other people. And Randy, there is no one that I trust more to give everything they've got than you. So I thank you again from the bottom of my heart, my friend.
And I want to thank you guys for what you're doing, because you're giving me a voice to be able to reach, and through the POW, is it Lieutenant Coffee that you guys have?
Captain Coffee.
Chad Williams. I mean, what you guys are doing is you're giving a voice and a platform that, like, you can't pick up the phone and call Chad Williams. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you get his story, his redemption. Lieutenant Coffee and the POW, and they talked about it there too. They talked about what got them through a POW camp was not their training. It was helping each other, and we're truly. And so I got to tell you, I am humbled and I am grateful for what you guys do there. I will continue to support it, and just thanks for the platform to be able to change lives.
I love it, brother. Thank you so much. We're going to stay in touch forever.
100%. Hey, we're going to be together forever.
Right on, my friend. I love it. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, buddy.